Okay, we are recording and we will get started. Thanks everyone again for your time this evening and interest in traffic calming in this project, specifically on Elysian Fields. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant with the Nashville Department of Transportation. That's NDOT that you see down there in the corner. And our role is to help Metro in the facilitation of this program. We also have on the call Lon Lee with Kinley Horn. She's a colleague also working on the program as well. And we're here tonight to talk about Elysian Fields. This is your first traffic calming meeting. We always do two, and so this is the first of two. And what I'm going to do this evening is cover three main things. One is a little bit of background on the program and how Elysian Fields got put into the program. Secondly, we'll look at the plan as it exists. It's premature, but we like to show you something, give you something to react to, kind of set some expectations for where we think the project might be headed on the street. And then third, just give you just a little bit more next steps and some time frame information and so forth. So we'd like to start with just making sure everybody is on the same page with what traffic calming is. It is in Metro, it's a residential street program. We really focus on streets that have that residential character. Occasionally we'll get into some areas that might have, some businesses on it or churches or things like that. We have a little bit of that here on Elysian Fields as we get down toward the Nolensville Road end, but we really focus on that residential component. We focus on physical solutions. That's as opposed to things like signage or paint. Those can be helpful, but we have found that nothing is as effective at slowing traffic down like putting something in the street. You guys have seen this. It's on Lynn and it's on some streets that are close to you, so you've probably encountered this. And then we do focus on speed reduction. Again, that sounds obvious, but that's as opposed to trying to displace or move traffic to some other street. We're really not in the business of trying to take traffic off a street. Sometimes that's what people want the traffic calming program to do, but we know that just pushes it somewhere else. And so what we do is try to keep traffic where it is more or less, but just slow it down and get it to drive responsibly through your neighborhood. There are a couple of, put all of these up, some E's we might talk about sometimes in the world of traffic and specifically traffic calming, education, enforcement, engineering. We focus on engineering. We know the education component is a big part of that, just informing people what the speed limit is and doing our best to persuade them to drive carefully. Enforcement is a little bit of a bigger stick. If a lot of people ask, why can't we just have Metro park a cruiser out here and write a few tickets every so often, and wouldn't that solve the problem? And I'd say that would probably help. But we know the demands on their time and the resources they have just to dedicate to traffic enforcement are not that robust, and they're doing a big job otherwise. And so we come in and we focus really on the engineering part. That is that the NDOT has in their responsibility all things right of way. They maintain the streets. So in as much as we can install countermeasures to help with speeding, that's what we try to do. We do partner. That's not to say we don't partner with MNPD. They're certainly aware and supportive of the program, but we don't really have a lot of control over their time or their resources. A little bit, this kind of gets in the education camp here. We like to share this a statistic about why we believe speeds are so important. When we look at the most vulnerable road users being pedestrians, and we know a big part of traffic calming and why people want traffic calming in their neighborhood is because a lot of times people can't even walk on their street and not be intimidated by traffic that's happening alongside them. You guys, for a lot of the street, I know, have a sidewalk. Some of it you don't, and so. But anyway, we look at pedestrian activity quite a bit, and so you see this infographic here talking about your likelihood of surviving a crash goes way down the faster traffic goes. So anyhow, that's kind of a sobering reminder of the importance of people driving responsibly when there are pedestrians around us, especially. This is a very much in-demand program. At our latest application window that was just open, we had about a little over 400. We're starting to knock on the door of 500 individual streets that neighbors applied for, just like Elysian Fields was applied for. That's a big load. That's a huge backlog of requests. We do about 50 projects a year, this being one of those. And so it's going to take a while. That's not to say all of those are good projects or we would engage in all of those, but it just goes to show that you all are not alone in having some of the speeding issues that you've noticed and applied to have Metro try and do something about. The way Elysian Field specifically got into the program, and the way any project gets into the program, is we take all of those requests in, all 460 of them, and then we begin collecting data. And we look at speeds, we look at how much volume there is on the street, that is the amount of traffic counts that are on the street. That's 70% of the weight. And then the other 30% has to do, as I mentioned, more with those pedestrian activities. Are there destinations nearby? Are there sidewalks or transit services or bike lanes and those types of things? Or do those exist on the street? And then one other thing that we've introduced this time is, does the street have a record of having a pedestrian incident on it? And so we look at all of that data and we rank those 1 through 400 and whatever. And we're looking at that top tier. So Elysian Fields made it into that top tier. I feel bad saying congratulations. That's not the right word. It's not a list you want to be in, but you're there. And so that's why we've engaged on this street. So the street we're looking at is Elysian Fields from Trousdale to Nolensville. I know Elysian Fields does funny things. I guess when the interstate came through, it got cut up in a place or two, and it's on the other side of Nolensville Road too, I believe. But we're just looking at that section there alongside Croft Middle School and the zoo, and the section that this group is probably most familiar with. The speed on the street, I won't get into really the 85th percentile speed, but it was 37 miles an hour. And 30 is posted. So, it wasn't the fastest street that we measured, but it's up there. The volume is pretty heavy at 3,500 cars a day. And then this will come into play when we start looking at the layout of the traffic calming design more, but it's about 21 feet from edge of pavement to edge of pavement. That's neither wide nor narrow. It's pretty typical for most metro streets. And so yeah, and then I know, as I mentioned, you do have some sidewalk. Does not go the entire way, but what is there is nice. It's kind of a unique sidewalk, as you all know, sort of separated from the street. So a nice facility. This is a map that we like to use just to first of all show you the limits. So Elysian Fields is the little green line right in the middle of your screen, just on the south side of that big block of green, which is the Nashville Zoo. And you can probably tell Trousdale is on the left-hand side of the slide, and Nolensville is kind of down through the middle. But the other thing that this map does that I like is it shows you some of the other requests that are in the area, as well as some other projects that are in the area. So a minute ago, I mentioned Lynn Drive, and that's the blue dashed line. So this map is available to you online, and you can see where all these projects are. So the blue dash line indicates a street where traffic calming has been implemented, and those would be raised devices. We're going to talk about this, but those would be speed cushions. The solid blue lines might have some other form of traffic calming, but not raised. We have some of that on Blackman. You may have noticed some of the squiggly lines and different things that are on Blackman. And then the purple lines are streets that have been applied for but have not been selected into the program as of yet. So this could be helpful if you said, what about this street? I've noticed a lot of problems on it. You can look here and see if someone has already requested traffic calming. this map is available. If you go, at the very end, I'm going to show you a QR code, and you can go to Metro's traffic calming homepage, and this is one of the options. It's the interactive tracker. So I want to talk a little bit before I show you the plan here about what is included in the plan and what some of our tools are in our toolkit. Right off the bat, the number one thing and the number one most requested item perhaps is speed cushions. So this is kind of the bread and butter of our program. We use them on, I won't say every street, but almost every street is going to a speed cushion. This is the first thing that we look at, really for a few simple reasons. One is they work. We know that our before and after data shows that they work. After you drive over them a few times, it doesn't take long to understand really how they work. But the other thing is it's very consistent. It's kind of a known product. We don't site build these. We order them and then they ship them to us. We use the same manufacturer, so we're really comfortable with how they perform and that type of information. So this is really our go-to tool. They're only about 3 inches tall. That surprises some people sometimes, but that's really all they are. And then they ramp up and ramp down, as you can see in the picture there on the bottom left. They come in different lengths, and that becomes important because we can design how traffic will operate over them. The longer the speed cushion, if we get a 14-foot one, that's going to allow traffic to go over it a little bit quicker at a higher speed and be a little more comfortable. If we go down to a 7-foot cushion, which we really reserve for those really urban neighborhoods or very high density neighborhoods where we really want to, bring an aggressive slow down to it, we can use a slower speed cushion. They're all 6 feet wide, and they come in those gaps because that allows a larger wheelbase vehicle to be less impacted, less slowed down by them. And what we have in mind there are emergency responders. So fire trucks are not as susceptible to them, ambulances and things like that. Those vehicles that when you need them there, you want them there in a hurry, and we want that too. And so these speed cushions have been a real benefit in that regard. We can lay them out in different configurations, as you see here. Sometimes we use 2, sometimes we use 3. We've done 4 on occasion, even got some real wide streets. In your case, 2 will be plenty. It'll look very similar to that picture if you decide to go forward with these, to that picture in the upper left-hand corner with 1 cushion on either side of the center line there. Speed tables are kind of a cousin to the speed cushions. They do go all the way across. That's the obvious difference. Otherwise, they perform much the same way. The profile is really very similar. It's just that they don't have a gap in them. So we've used these on occasion where conditions warrant, but we don't use them very often. The performance of them are about the same. This is back to speed cushions where some of the data that I had mentioned, we're seeing about a 9 mile an hour speed differential before and after. Of course, at the point where the cushion is, that might be a little different. And then there's gaps in between where speed may be a little higher. It kind of goes fast and slow. But when we lay these out, we'll talk about this. We lay them out to minimize that speed up and slow down. But anyway, the data is in and more coming in all the time, and pleased with the results here. One of the other tools in our toolbox are radar feedback signs. This is one of those less intrusive countermeasures that we have. If people just say, look, the speed cushions are just not for us on this street, this is another tool that we do have. The effectiveness is a little less, as you might imagine, but it does give good feedback and kind of remind people that, hey, there is a speed limit and you're going over it often. So that is real time. These do also collect data, so we can continue to follow up and see what that effectiveness is. It's also very quick and pretty low cost there. Sometimes we will do narrowing. This could be standalone, but often it's in conjunction with speed cushions. Whether a street has a center line or not, what we're looking at is sometimes we add edge lines to the road, just to give the impression that a road might be narrower than it really is. We know that if you're driving, the wider the street and the further the houses are set back, and the more you can see, that tends to result in higher speeds. And so sometimes we'll look at some narrowing options. Traffic circles are in the toolbox, but we use them very, very sparingly because the main reason is because it does limit some of those larger vehicle turning movements, particularly school buses. And so anyway, it's not something we have used these in the past. You will find these in a few places around Davidson County, but for now they are not a primary tool that we use. Sometimes we do use bulb outs and chicanes. We've got some really large intersections around the county where it's just a lot of pavement. And so again, the more pavement, the more the less restriction a driver has, the more tempted they may be tempted to go faster. And so we can have an impact sometimes at intersections by kind of narrowing those up and doing what we call bulb outs, which you see on the picture on the left, is just kind of squeezing everything, taking up some of that excess pavement, putting some, those white sticks are called delineators, and just squeezing the driver just a little bit there at those intersections. Chicanes are something that, a driver kind of goes back and forth and with some parking, it just sort of creates a meandering. It kind of replicates what you find in older, closer in neighborhoods where you have a lot of on-street parking. We've been on those streets where you almost have to yield to the car that's coming at you because it's so tight. Kind of replicates that feel. Again, we don't use those very often. Sometimes people will suggest things or recommend things that are just outside our toolbox, and so those are not totally off the table. They're always worth considering. It may just be not to our group, and so we like to promote Hub Nashville is a great clearinghouse for all types of service requests in Metro. You can go to hub.Nashville.gov and log that, and that's not just traffic calming, and it's not even just Department of Transportation. That's pretty much every department in Nashville is represented there. So if you weren't aware of Hub Nashville, it's a great resource for county residents. Then also just some information about walk and bike. We don't build sidewalks, but just some information. And again, these requests can all go to Hub Nashville. If you have a sidewalk request or repair, beautification, we've got some information, those folks. So what we have for Elysian Fields, this is the preliminary plan for the street, and no surprise, it is kind of speed cushion based, and it goes again all the way from Trousdale on the left hand side of the screen to Nolensville Road on the right hand side of the screen. The purple line is Elysian Fields. The stop sign right in the middle is that always stop on Danby. So what that stop sign is showing you is that Elysian Fields itself has to stop. That's the only place, as you all know, that Elysian Fields has to stop, with a possible exception you all may have. I don't know this, y'all would know this. There may be a crossing guard down there at Croft Elementary. So during school times that you may get stopped there by that. You may not even have that, I don't know. But anyhow, the way we lay these out, so let me finish defining this. The little yellow trapezoid there with a C are proposed speed cushion locations, and that's about it. And the way we lay these out is we look at the distances between those points. So in the first case, we would look at the distance from Trousdale to Danby, because those are kind of control points for traffic. And we'd say, that has a distance of X feet. And then we will typically divide that distance by, we're looking for a spacing here of somewhere between about 400 and 600 feet. We have found that does a good job at slowing traffic down, and at the same time, it doesn't allow a lot of slow down and speed back up. You can, and there will be people who will do that, who will go over a speed cushion and then speed up to go to the next one. But far and away, most drivers kind of recognize that sort of doesn't make sense, and we get a good gradual, consistent speed reduction across the entire length of that segment. And so by doing that, we have 5 cushion locations between Trousdale and Danby. And then we've got another 5 between Danby and Nolensville, but there's a little bit of a gap that you see there right where it says Elysian Fields Road. And that is because there's as you all know, a pretty good downhill right there as you get to the cross driveway. It's kind of going into that little curve, and it's on a slope. And both of those things are things that we avoid with speed cushions. We don't want to put them on a curve as someone trying to navigate that while steering around a curve is not a good idea. And likewise on a hill if it's got a significant slope on it. And so we skip that little part. I don't think that's going to be a big enough gap that it's going to create any kind of speeding issues for us. I still think we're going to get good results there through that segment. But anyhow, that's how the plan looks to this point. Let me stop there. I've been going a lot and hadn't really broken. So let's hear if there's any feedback on this slide or any questions about the process and how you got here and anything I've covered so far. Just open it up. Rebecca, I see a hand raise on your.
Yeah, hi, thanks. This is really great information. Unfortunately, I'm one of the people that lives on the curve right there in Elysian Fields Road. And trying to make a left out of my driveway is a gamble every time. And I understand what you're saying about the slope, but I know that people will come out of the apartment complex there right before Croft, and they use that slope to pick up speed coming around that curve. I've seen a couple people run into the guardrail that's on the southern side of the road. So while I understand what you're saying, I'm a little bit concerned that for me personally, that is the most dangerous part of the road, and that's where they're actually going to be able to pick up speed.
Yeah, and you're saying they're coming out of the apartments?
If then maybe they're not coming out of the apartments, but right about at that second entrance, that most eastern entrance, is where they start picking up speed. Now, I
Yeah,
think the speed cushion that is there, it looks like it's right before Lynn, will probably be sufficient to stop. That's going uphill, so they're
right.
not gaining as much speed there. It's the people heading toward Nolensville coming around that curve that are really flying.
Yeah. And what I've tried to do with the speed cushion there, just to the left of where it says Elysian Fields, is put it right at the top of the hill, so we catch them as soon as we can before we start going down. One thing that we have yet to do is we will go out after this meeting and do some infield work where we'll take a look at that hill and we'll say, okay, I think it's probably steeper. Our threshold is 6%,
Mm.
and that's a desirable minimum. And 8% is just absolutely, that's kind of the cutoff. We don't do anything steeper than 8. I have a feeling that at least part of that hill is steeper than 8, but I've
I
tried
think
to
you're right.
spot it. Yeah, it's pretty steep. And I've tried to spot it, as close as I could, but there may be a chance that we can scoot it down a little bit. But
Right. The
that,
closer you can scoot it to the Croft entrance, I think it'll start to make a difference on that curve, because I can't, because it's also, my house is up on the hill, so I can't see the cars coming from either direction. So I'm really taking a chance that they're hopefully doing close to 30 when I'm trying to pull out.
yeah, I understand. This comes up occasionally that I wish we had more tools for hills. There's just not a lot. You don't want to put something out there that's going to create a safety issue for sure.
Mm.
Occasionally we will kind of on a spot like this, if it's a big enough gap, we can use a radar feedback sign and hope that has some effectiveness. But that's about where we've gotten to so far.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Chris, looks like Chris has a hand raised.
Hi. Hello?
We hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Several questions on this. 'Cause we live in Elysian Fields, down closer to the Trousdale side. This feels excessive and kind of a waste of money, especially with Lynn. Feels like it has half of these. Could you not put maybe a stop sign at on the Lynn side where Elysian Fields is, or something like that? Because this is also it's a, I mean, it is a pass through, or what do they call it? Thoroughfare pass through. It's a cut through. Um, it does. This just feels excessive.
Yeah. To address the comment about stop signs, we do hear that often as well. They're just not in the program. Stop signs are not something that we can install in this. You know, there's a big manual that dictates, you know, when you can use traffic control and what you're supposed to do with it. And it's pretty clear that stop signs are not to be used as speed enforcement, which is what we're talking about. It's to assign the right of way. And so Metro is really particular about where they put always stops, which is what this would be. And there's a whole commission that has to approve them and that kind of thing. So we
What
don't
is,
have that in our toolbox. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so like a stop sign couldn't even be used where the middle school is, like even in that area?
Well, what has to happen if we're looking for an always stop, that is, every approach comes to a stop.
Uh-huh.
There's a study that's done, counts are done, and you got to look at, you know, how many cars are going through left, right on each approach, and there are specific volume warrants that have to be met. Because what you don't want to have is, I mean, at school time that might work just fine, but you know, all summer long that thing is sitting out there and nobody's ever coming out of that driveway, and after a while traffic gets to where it's like, I come through this intersection 3 times a day and I never see anybody. Forget it, I'm just going through. And you know, and they sort of lose some the stop sign kind of loses some authority. That's the philosophy behind it anyway. So yeah, we don't do a lot of stop signs.
This just looking at this just feels so excessive.
Yeah, well,
This is
again,
there's not this many on Lynn. This is excessive.
yeah. Yeah, you may be right. I don't know how many there are on Lynn. And it sort of feels like on Lynn there are a couple, and then it seems like there's kind of a gap, and then they come back or something. I'm not really sure how those were developed. But again, when we're looking at this is signed at 30. And so we hadn't talked about this yet, but our typical go-to is the 10.5 foot speed cushion. I should have known this, but I believe that the ones on land are 7 feet. That used to be kind of what NDOT used all over the place. So this will be a longer speed cushion than what's on land, which means you can drive it, you know, a little bit faster. And so our data, we've used this same layout and this same speed cushion, probably most recently out in West Mead on a street called Breslin, and we did some data collection, and it's average. It's right on 25. You know, so um, we can look at, you know, you can always extend the spacing here. By excessive, I imagine that's what you mean. It just looks like there's too many of them, perhaps.
Oh, way too many. I'd get rid of
Yeah,
3/4 of them. I mean, I
yeah.
personally, I don't want any of them. I'm not a fan of this, especially on a main thoroughfare. But if something has to go, I'd get rid of 3/4 of these. This is way excessive for a thoroughfare, in my opinion. But I
Well,
wouldn't do any of that. But
I hear you. Sometimes the scale can be a little misleading, but I think we're on the upper end of that. You know, I think we're somewhere between 500 and 600 feet apart. But you're right. I mean, you can always take some away if that's kind of the consensus that we get to through this process. We just know that the longer gap you have in between of them, uh, you know, there is going to be higher speed in between that. But hey, if we were to take a set out and kind of space them out, um, it can still be a good project, no doubt about it. So thanks for that input.
also, if the concern is towards Nolansville, why not just keep them confined more towards Nolansville? Because I haven't really seen a problem on our end. Once you, if anything, I instead of to me this is a waste of money. I'd rather y'all build a sidewalk because we have because we're missing the sidewalk once you pass the zoo. I'd rather have a sidewalk so people aren't walking in my yard. Me personally than that. But so if the concern is the Nolansville side, why not then just focus on the Nolansville side?
I don't have any information that the focus is Nolansville. So when we're given the project, and I think largely it's based on that application. It goes all the way from Trousdale to Nolansville. So
Yeah.
that's why we're looking at that. I don't have any information that other than the comment that was just made, like coming down that hill, um, you know, I haven't heard that that's where the main concern is.
Okay.
About the sidewalk, that's fair. It's really, it becomes a cost thing largely.
Right.
You know, these projects are somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000, and a sidewalk probably 10 times that. They get very expensive due to stormwater mainly.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering my questions and listening. Thank you.
Sure. Any other comments on this or?
Who do you apply to for a sidewalk? I agree with Chris that the sidewalks through the length of Elysian Fields would be a good thing. Is that your department or is that a different one?
Well, it's our department. It is NDOT, but it is a different office or a different division within that department. And so the best way to do it is to go on Hub Nashville, and there is a spot where you can go to that and specifically request a sidewalk. I will tell you what they're going to say is we have a plan, and they're going to probably give you that plan. It's called the Walk-in Bike Master Plan. It's available online too, and it kind of spells out what they're supposed to be working on for the next 3 years or so. And so I don't. Elysian Fields may be on there. I don't think it is, but it could be. But anyway, you can consult that and tell. But always feel free to go ahead and ask the question. Put in a raised hand for, hey, we need a sidewalk over here. I would do it, and then you'll get a response from that department or that office.
Hey Jeffrey, my name's Katie. I was wondering if you guys deal with pedestrian crossing signs, like the ones that you can push a button and they start flashing when people need to cross. Because crossing the streets really at a stop sign, I agree with you. Stop signs have not been effective on Elysian Fields at all. People run them with no regard at high speeds. And so I was wondering if there's any way that you guys deal with that kind of thing, like at Danby and Elysian, or no, I'm sorry, Abbey and Elysian. That's kind of a tricky area to cross. And sometimes people will stop for you, but a lot of times they won't. And I'm imagining down by Croft, further down, where there is sometimes a crossing guard. Are those things that y'all deal with?
Not generally, and the reason is because really, like at the first, we deal with the whole length of the street and not individual spot locations, and so what I would recommend you do again is lodge that in Hub Nashville, and what they should do is come out and do kind of a pretty cursory kind of a look where they might they might count pedestrians, they might count traffic, take a look at the sight distance, that kind of stuff. I think sort of by evidence that you are in the traffic calming program might weight their consideration of that. It would seem to make sense. So that again, I hate to keep saying that's somebody else, but that's somebody else, and we don't have the authority to do that as part of this project. But
Okay.
we have done projects where they came in and someone made that suggestion, and the other engineers, at Metro looked at it and said that looks right to us, and they all kind of went in about the same time.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey Jeff, real quick, there's a question in the chat. Grace asked what size length for the cushion?
That room, you can do that as well if you don't want to talk. So a little bit about where we're going. We're here at the Red Circle meeting number 1. Hopefully you all got a mailer advertising this meeting, and the next thing we will do after this is take some of those things that you've talked about and take our plan as it exists and go out and get on the ground and see. So we're going to look for the hills and the curves. And the last thing that might change that plan somewhat, I didn't mention this, but it becomes very important in a lot of streets. I don't think you're as susceptible to driveways, but driveways. We never put a set of speed cushions directly in front of somebody's driveway. We try to keep them at least 15 feet apart because there are no driveways on the other side of the street. Generally speaking, I don't think we'll have any problem, finding a place for these. So we'll refine that design, and then we'll come back, as I mentioned, and we have a meeting too. That will get set up where we'll kind of show you, okay, here's what we changed or what we didn't change, and where we are. Does this look good to everybody? And then we go to the ballot process. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about the ballots now, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But we'll talk more about the ballot process in the next meeting, and that's where I think it was Chris, said, look, I just don't think this is for our street. That's your chance to voice that. And we take that information and we're looking for 2/3 of the voters on the street have to be in agreement that this is something that you want, because we know this can be controversial. Not everybody likes it. But a lot of people do and see the need for it. So anyway, that's a process we'll talk about. And then the last step, if it's successful, it goes into the construction. We'll talk more about timeline on that. So there are months ahead of you in this process. Nothing's going to come out and happen. It's not even going to be this summer. If this goes very smoothly, in all likelihood, it's probably going to. We probably wouldn't be looking at doing anything until late in the year, early winter, probably, if it's in 2023. So.
Is anyone else having sound issues?
I've lost audio here.
Okay.
I can't see him or hear him if he's still talking.
Okay, Jeffrey, we're not able to hear you at all or see you. I never could see you, but we can't hear you. And Grace, your question was about the length of the speed cushions. He said something about 10.5 feet is their standard length.
I'm still having trouble hearing. Is he still muted?
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
I can't hear or see him either.
Hey, Chris, I just went on Hub National and put in a sidewalk request. So we'll see what happens, what kind of response there is for that.
Okay, awesome. I better do that right now too. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can flood them with that request from Danby to Trousdale to get that sidewalk put in. It would just be nicer to be able to walk the whole length of Elysian Fields.
It really would.
Hey, Becca, this is your neighbor, Brianna Banks, by the way. Hello.
Hi.
I have a couple more questions for him about our little hill.
I do too. I want to know more about this voting process as well.
I know. I've been really wanting to get a 4-way stop at our stop because I've seen so many wrecks, Lynn and Elysian, but I imagine they'll never do that. But, hey, shoot for the moon.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Our hill is really kind of a nightmare. And for me, it's worse with people coming east because they're coming down the hill. But from where you are, you're kind of probably getting both of them are just as bad.
Yeah.
And now we've got all that new construction there, 100 yards from North.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be like 75 more cars.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just hang on a little longer, see if he comes back.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to get a hold of him. He probably lost connection.
Anyone hear me? Am I back? I'm back.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I am
Yes.
sorry. I lost the connection. Thanks for hanging with me. Let me see if I just had a couple more slides that were some contact information and the website. Let's see. So this is just the website information. If you want to take a snapshot of that, you're welcome to. Again, this meeting will be recorded and posted, and so you'll be able to have this, or just Google Metro Traffic Calming is what I normally do. You get to our page. I'm Jeff Hammond. I'm the bottom name there, and that's my email address. Feel free if you think of other questions, want to give any more input on the plan. Feel free to email me. Gil Thomas is our program manager. He's the Metro employee in charge of the program, so feel free to include him or just email him instead. Whatever you want to do. That's the two best forms of contact for the project right there. I don't know. I guess I got through it. I don't know exactly when I fell off, but anyway, I had just about gotten through everything I wanted to. So, are there any final questions or comments?
Jeff,
Could
can
I
you
ask
hear
one
me
more?
okay?
Yeah, Rebecca, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry, that was me, Lan.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to say that there was a question in the chat from Grace. She asked what the size length for the cushion was.
Yeah, the length that we're looking at for this project is 10 and a half. And that's kind of our go-to for particularly sort of suburban character neighborhoods like this one. You guys have nice setbacks off the road, and it's not super dense, and so we think that'll give us our best combination of kind of comfort and aggressiveness in terms of the speed that we're looking at. And so uh, that's that. Was there another part to that question, or just the size?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Can I ask about the voting process that you mentioned? You said after the second meeting, there'll be a vote of concerned neighbors. How are those votes collected? Who's eligible to vote?
Yeah, good question. So on the voting process, we do limit those, kind of like we did limited the invitations to this meeting to the property owners along the street. We're happy for everybody to come to the meetings. It's not that, but we have to cut it off somewhere. But on the ballot, we are more strict about who gets to vote. And so it's only people that own property that share the right of way, their property line touches the right of way of Elysian Fields within this project segment. Okay, so there's, those of you along the south side of the street, I think there's a couple on the north side. When it comes to things like, we're not gonna ballot the zoo or some of those commercial properties over in Grassmere, for instance. It would just be those residential properties. Things like apartment complexes, we don't ballot all of the residents of that, but we do send one to the owner of the apartment complex. So all of the apartments are represented by one vote, just the way a single household is. Condominiums or things where they may own. I don't know if you have this or not, but if any of those multifamily units are condos, they will be given it, and they all share that. They're all on one property that is adjacent to the street. We will send a ballot to every owner that we have on record in that way. But again, it is the owner. So if you or your neighbor rents the property, you may never see the card or the ballot. Those are going to the owner's addresses. Someone else had started to ask a question at the same time. And Chris, I see
Hey,
you.
my name's Brianna Banks. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I've got a fussy toddler in the background, so I'll make this quick. I live at the corner of Lynn and Elysian, and I share the same perspective as Becca shared a little while ago about the hill, coming down around that corner and a lot of pickup of speed. My concern is actually related more so to the school with all of the students. There is no markings along the road in terms of crosswalk or signage like Danby and Elysian has. We have a lot of, middle schoolers crossing through our yard, urinating on our property, leaving trash, that kind of thing, because they don't have really a way to get across the road safely. And I mean, every day I'm seeing kids dodging cars, and I've seen several pretty serious wrecks, including someone who had a stroke at that intersection. So my question is there anything that we can do to kind of help as well at that intersection for the students and just pedestrians in general that are trying to get across Elysian Fields onto Lynn?
Let me ask you, I spoke about this earlier and was admittedly uninformed, but is there a crossing guard during school times at that intersection?
There is not. We have put in a request, and I believe that they did a traffic count a while back, and we were told that the students shouldn't be crossing there. They should just be using the school buses to get up to the Mandolin Apartments and to some of the neighborhoods further into Caldwell Abbey. But I just think that's interesting that, I mean, I get that there's bus systems, but there are still a lot of students that walk. And since there is, markings on the road at Danby and Elysian Fields, if you, go right out of Croft Middle, it would just make sense to me that they would also do that if students go left. And I'm friends with the school crossing guard. I see her almost every day. And I mean, her presence is definitely needed right outside of the school, but it is surprising to me that there's not markings, further down the road at Lynn. Does that make sense?
So you're saying the intersection of Lynn and Elysian Fields. Okay.
Correct.
It makes perfect sense. What I will do is, I'll just take this back to Metro and say this was raised. I mean, I don't think we have any other marking plan for the project, but I'll certainly, make that known and, as a key piece of feedback and see, do they want to do that? Do they want to look at it more? What needs to happen? And I'll try to report back to you at that next meeting on what, if
Thank you so much.
do about that. Sure.
And I'm joining on the phone, and so I just I'm going to look at the slides at a later point, but will these be on the traffic calming page on the website under like Elysian Fields? I was looking there a couple minutes ago on my phone and I didn't see it, so I just wanted to know where to go to follow up, if that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am. Good question. I think this is really new, but I think there is now a new section that is just, kind of a list of all of the past online meetings. So I think it's got its own little selection box you can get, and then take you to all the various meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, did I see another hand raised from you?
Yes, I had a question in regards to the voting again. You said that it's one per address. Is it if two people are on the owner, not the mortgage, the deed? Do both those people get a vote? Is it still just one vote? How does that work?
Yeah, it's one per household. So if you and your the person you share the property with disagree, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to figure it out. You only get to vote once.
No problem. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Those votes collected, is it online? Is it a paper ballot? How's
It's
that work?
online. Yeah, it's online. And so just like the cards that were sent out for this meeting, another round of cards after that second meeting will be sent out. And we'll give you we'll give you a heads up, kind of a 2 week window or something like that, and then there's a QR code on that card and a website and a phone number, but I think most people are using the QR code, and that takes you straight to a Nashville.gov ballot page, and then you just type in your information and it logs it.
Okay, but you said there's another one of these meetings to further refine the plan? Because I'm kind of with Chris. I think 5 on that stretch between Danby and Trousdale is a little bit excessive. I would like to see some. I think maybe 5 is a little ambitious. 2 or 3 might be sufficient to slow people down there. Of course, on my curve, I want all I can get. I'll tell you, you can put it right in front of my driveway. You have my permission.
Okay.
I amen that one too.
And you can take the ones on our end at Trousdale, and you can actually put them on theirs as well, because I really don't want any on my side.
I'm okay with that, Chris. We can share the traffic cushions.
I did have another quick question about the voting again. Is it 66% of all the households, or 66% of those that actually just vote?
Those that actually vote.
Okay. Thank you.
It's just like a real election. I think we have higher turnout than a presidential election. I think people care more about speed cushions than who the president is. But yeah, it works well. I mean, we used to have to do door to door, and we did require, it was 70% of all the homeowners, and it was like impossible. I mean, these people were killing themselves trying to get these signatures, and doing it in the summer heat and everything. It just wasn't, and it was really hard to get an absolute number. So now we just take, the responses that we get, and we're looking for 2/3 yeses in that group. I'm making a note there of, the curve is kind of priority 1 and less so west of Danby. Very good. And put that back up. Anything else? Again, I don't want to keep you.
So
It's
will
too
we be
nice.
getting a postcard just telling us when that next meeting is? Is that how that gets communicated?
You will, yes, ma'am. It's the same way. We hadn't figured out a good way to kind of inform everybody, so we're keeping the post office busy. But yeah, it'll be
great.
the same thing, and just because we've kind of gone to online and all this stuff, but we don't want you to not talk to your neighbors. So feel free to spread that word and get people. Our main thing is just make sure people are informed. We want them to know about the project and why we're doing it, and what opportunities they have for input. And this is the only. I think this is probably the only program in Metro that you actually get to vote. Do you want it or not? And so we try to be very democratic.
Thank you.
I was just on the TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, and I do think there's a place that you can sign up for updates for projects. I haven't tried it yet, but that might be something that we could do in addition. If you're worried about missing the postcard or just want quicker updates than that, I think we can sign up for it, and they probably will email us when action is taken or there's another meeting.
All right. Well, again, thanks for taking the time this evening and your interest in the project and your streets. And I think we all want the same thing. We want it to be safe. We want it to be, kind of carry forward the high quality of life, whatever that means to you all. So we're here kind of at your service. If you have other things that you think we should look at or not look at or whatever, feel free again to email and get in touch with us that way. With that, I will say thank you, and on behalf of Lan and her team over there. Appreciate, again, you joining us, and look forward to meeting with you here very soon. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.